Wet on wet is what makes watercolor so unique and beautiful, but it is also what the most beginners struggling with. It seems to be such a mystery for the beginners, but once you learn the property of watercolor, you will start to understand how it works. Let's talk about it today. Hi, this is Eric from Cafe Watercolor. One of the most common questions I have gotten is about wet on wet. How much water to use, how to avoid cauliflower edges, and when to use wet on wet. It can feel very complicated and tricky to get it right. But don't worry, I will give you some simple principles. Once you learn these principles, things will be a lot more clear for you. The first principle is to remember that water dilutes the paint. So the more water you use, the more transparent your colors will be. This simple concept is the core of the painting process. As you know, watercolor is painted from light to dark, transparent to opaque. So you started painting with more water, and as you need to paint darker, you start to use less water and more paint, which leads to the next principle. The second principle is to figure out what you are trying to do. As I was saying, water dilutes the paint, so if your purpose is to add more paint to your wash, then you definitely don't want to add too much water to it. This is a very important principle, and this is the number one reason why people are getting unwanted cauliflower edges. If you want to add paint to your wash, your mixture on your brush needs to have less water than where you are going to paint. Unless you want to wash off the paint like creating the dry grass effect, you need to watch out for the mixture you are going to use for your wet on wet. The third principle is to pay attention to the drying stage of your painting. There are 4 drying stages in a wash that I come up with: wet, moist, damp, and dry. Wet is when your paper soaked up plenty of water, it won't hold more water anymore, and it started to flow. And if you paint tilted like me, there will be bead gather on the bottom. Moist, like the word suggests, is when the paper had plenty of moisture. This is a good stage to do wet on wet. Damp, however, is a dangerous stage. The wash is starting to dry, so if you give it just a little bit of water, the paper is going to suck up the water and push the paint that's already settled on the paper. And that creates the cauliflower edges. It's also called backrun. And the dry stage is, well, dried. You will be able to re-wet the surface safely. Now the speed of your painting going through these stages varies, depends on the paper, paint, and the environment that you're in. But all paintings go through these stages, so you need to use the right mixture accordingly. If your painting is damp and your mixture is moist, you are probably going to see cauliflower edges. So it's very important that you use sufficient paint in your mixture. I often see students using too much water in their mixture, and what happens is they end up diluting the paint all over the place and the paintings start to look very muddy. The fourth principle is to only use wet on wet when you want soft shape. Wet on wet is mostly used for a soft blooming effect. If you want a hard shape that's clear to read, you want to paint it on a dry surface. A good painting often has a nice balance of hard and soft edges. If a painting has too many soft edges, it can look too mushy. And if a painting has too many hard shapes, it can look too busy and too harsh. So think about where do you need soft edges and shape. Soft shapes are usually used for distant objects in the fog, smaller, softer details within the big major shape, transitions, and things that are out of focus, and so on. Okay, now once again, let's apply what we learned in a painting. I talk the talk and paint the paint. But before we continue, remember to give a like and subscribe if you find my video helpful. So I'm going to paint this photo that's taken by my friend when she was visiting Qinghai in China. I find this photo very beautiful and I want to paint it. I think it is important to apply what we know in a real painting instead of just making random washes and shapes. So let's paint. Okay, so as always, we will start with the drawing. We especially pay the attention to the river because the river is the most important shape in this painting. It is most sophisticated and it brings out the most detail. And it also is a huge element that brings the depth and the direction of the painting. So make sure you give it enough care and attention to the shape of the river. So from distance it should be pretty thin, and as it approaches the foreground is going to be wider, and the turn is going to be less frequent as well. So definitely don't skimp on it, because when you start painting you really need a good drawing as a guide. There's some other rivers on the side I did sketch it in, but they are not as important as our main river in the middle. So I'm not going to give it as much attention as the main river, but still, you should care about the shape that you draw. Still, keep your drawing loose. You can see that I hold my pencil way back so that my line can be a little bit more organic and natural. This is a nature scenery after all. So after the drawing, we're going to mix a nice big wet mixture. Use a big brush for the first wash. And make sure there's bead underneath forming. That means your wash is wet enough. Before it's dry, I'm going to mix a little bit thicker mixture for the cloud. But do it very quickly, just one quick stroke and let it be. Don't dab around it and don't dig around it. Now with a slightly thicker moist mixture, I'm going to paint the background mountain. Try to use some big brush stroke to finish that. Don't keep dabbing into it. And now we can continue the wash down, and as we do that we can add some warmer color. So things are cooler in the distance, and as they come forward they are warmer. And now we're going to slow down just a little bit and paint around the river. This is very important. You want to preserve the light of the river. So you really need to focus and use the tip of your brush to paint around it. However, don't slow down too much. You don't want the wash to be dry. And if you find it overwhelming, you can pre-mix your color, the color that you're going to use in this wash. So plan ahead if you need to. I'm mixing stuff on the fly because I want things to be a little bit more spontaneous, and I do think I have enough experience that I can do that. So this video is sped up about 4 times, but whenever I'm painting around the river I slow down just a little bit and really try to focus on maintaining the good shape. So this wash is actually very stressful, not because of the wet on wet to me, it's because I want to paint really good shape. So I really focus when I'm painting this, and after this wash I'm actually quite tired. And don't forget the house, we want to paint around it. It is a white house, so we definitely want to preserve it white. So I'm finishing the wash, and before it's dry I'm mixing a nice dark creamy mixture for the foreground, wet onto wet. Make sure your mixture is dry and thick enough, otherwise it's not going to stay. Now I'm mixing an even darker and thicker mixture for some little details in the foreground, and using the tip of my brush, just drop the pigments in and they will stay. Splattering a little bit of water, and now we get a nice grassy foreground with different volume. Make sure your first wash is clean, so don't spend too much time on any step here. Now I'm gonna check this drying state, make sure there's no more shine, and make sure it's dry to touch. So I'm gonna re-wet the top center because I'm going to have hard edge on the side, and as they come to the middle they're going to soften up. So there's sharp edge silhouettes on the side, but in the middle they merge into the background. And I'm using a clean damp brush to soften and fade up the bottom. We don't want to leave a hard edge on the bottom because it is one continuous land. So we soften things up with a nice damp brush. Some more soft details before it's dry. Here's some bushes and maybe some trees, grass in the distance. And as I paint outside of the wet area, it's going to leave sharp edge and sharp shape, which is fine. You don't want your painting to have soft shape only. You need a nice balance between soft and sharp. You want that contrast between sharp and soft. If the whole painting is soft shape, then it's going to look very mushy, and you don't want that. I'm actually painting with some new brushes I ordered from China. They are all squirrel hairbrush, and they are very good. They maintain very nice tip, so I can do detail work even with larger brush, and they hold nice amount of water, and they are very soft to paint. So this is great. I really like them. So I'm painting with a darker moist mixture to paint the terrace of the landscape. We need to suggest the form changes with the value. So it's darker on the side because the sun, the light is coming from the above. So the side will be a little bit darker. And I do a mixture of hard and soft edge just to make things a little bit more interesting. I'm hinting a little bit of the shadow on the side of the river because it's in different height, and suggest a little bit of that will actually give the river a little bit more dimensionality because the land is a little bit higher. And now I'm painting the grass on the right, the darker grass, and I'm trying to make it into one single shape. So one single wash, one single shape. And after I paint that big shape, I'm able to add more soft detail wet on wet. So whenever you paint a wet or moist shape, always think about if you want to do wet on wet on top. You don't want to miss out the window to do that. Of course, you can re-wet the area after it's dry, but if you can do it in one go, it's going to look fresher. The more you re-wet the area, the less fresh it's going to look. So if you want to do wet on wet, make sure you do it while you still can. And as you have more experience, you're going to paint faster naturally. And as you paint faster, you're going to have more time to think about what you're going to do, and you're going to have more time to do and play wet on wet. Now I'm adding a little bit more details on the left. A little bit shadows here and there. Couple areas that's going to suggest more form and structure. In the large scale landscape like this, little details goes a long way. Don't try to paint every single detail you see. The more detail you paint, you're actually breaking the scale of the scenery. So a little bit of detail, just keep the painting nice and fresh. What I really want to convey in this painting is that nice vast landscape feeling with nice crisp air. And that's all I really want to convey. So one or two detail missing, things are not matching exactly, doesn't really matter. Keeping it fresh and clean is more important. And now I'm going to do a glazing in the foreground. The foreground is dry while we're working on the rest of the painting. The darker foreground will push the depths a little bit more. And since the foreground is wet again, we can do some wet on wet, any chance we get. Adding another house to the right, just to balance that out a little bit, otherwise it's only going to have a big dark shape on the left foreground. We want a little bit of balance. About a year ago, I did a large-scale landscape like this one as well, but I like this one a lot better just because it feels a lot fresher, and I get to play with wet on wet a little bit better. So I do think I progress as well, so I'm really happy about it. And here is the finished painting. I hope you like this painting and video, and I hope this is helpful for you. So I hope that was helpful for you, but if you watched my videos before, you know that I'm a huge believer in practice and learn by doing. I can give you some practical advice and useful tips, but I can't put in the time and practice for you. So take some time, have fun, and really make this knowledge yours by doing it. If you like this video, remember to like and subscribe. If you have any other question about watercolor, leave a comment down below. Also, remember to download my free Fast Track Watercolor ebook. I'm Eric from Cafe Watercolor. I will see you again very soon.